In 1954, the Supreme Court made a decision that would transform the landscape of education in our country, in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education. Today we will hear from Sacramento State alum Jeffery Benson, who shares his family's connection to Brown versus the Board of Education, in which his mother, aunt, and grandmother were all plaintiffs in the historic court case. Jeffery, who graduated from Sac State in the winter of 2024, returned for the Spring Commencement ceremonies as the 2025 recipient of the President's Medal, Sac State's top student honor, to deliver a speech to graduating students of the College of Education on a day that happens to be the 71st anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education decision. His narrative is one of perseverance, legacy, and unrelenting progress. Jeffery Benson, welcome to the show. Now, what I understand is that your journey to Sac State started in a very interesting and unique way. You were making deliveries to campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is definitely, I would call, a full circle moment. I worked back in the 90s as a Airborne Express delivery driver, and I was a lead, meaning that I kind of supervised multiple drivers, multiple routes in the Sacramento County area, and often I would act as a floater. So I would, on any given day, if someone called in sick or if they needed assistance delivering freight because of time crunch, I would jump in and help out. And so because I lived in the Midtown area of Sacramento, I would often get relegated to cover the American River area, the Watt area, the 50 corridor. And sometimes that meant that I would have to drop off freight, overnight express freight at Sacramento State. And so, yes, I used to do that, and I would often deliver the freight and walk through the campus. Maybe I had to deliver it to an administrator or someone more direct besides facilities. And I would walk through the campus and get back to my delivery truck, and I would have this visceral experience, and not really knowing what the derivative of that was, but I knew that there was a connection there, and I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. But as it were, some 3 decades
Pretty fortunate to be part of them. I think I had a similar feeling on campus of like, wow, this is a really special place and it's been in my backyard the whole time. I just didn't realize it. But I want to go back farther because you come from a rather interesting legacy. I understand that your mother, grandmother, and aunt
and uber important, obviously. So I was born in Topeka, Kansas in the 60s, in 1963. And I was raised during, what I still consider to this day very tumultuous civil rights times, right? And so my mother and my grandmother and my aunt and even my father, they were young kids during that era. And they had to be hand-walked by my grandmother miles away to a all-black school when they could have gone to a more readily available, so a not so distant middle school and grade school for that matter, so just some blocks away. So, these were segregated schools, obviously, and they were relegated to go to all black schools. So my grandmother and some of the other members in the community, family members, parents, and even some black teachers decided to take up a petition in Topeka, Kansas. And so my grandmother became one of the original, and my mom, one of the original 13 plaintiffs in that historic 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that led to U.S. school desegregation. And so, it's the center of our family and has been in terms of civil rights and social justice. The case actually spanned 5 states, including Kansas. And, my mother has been invited every decade, maybe every 5 years, depending upon where the anniversary lands, if you will. Whoever the liaison is at the White House at that time, it has been in the past. Laura Bush was the liaison to the Brown case. President Obama was the liaison, and more recently, last year, former President Biden was the liaison to the legendary landmark civil rights case. And what that meant is that each decade or each anniversary, we are called upon to continue that legacy. Last year, it was my mother's 3rd time having been invited to the White House, and she called me up, and she's aging. Admittedly, she'll be 80 years old this year, and so she said, Jeff, it would be really amazing to have you by my side as President Biden calls us back to the White House. Again, generational full circle moment. So, of course, I said yes.
Yeah.
How could I deny my mother that, that support and the opportunity that my family fought vigorously to make sure that the legislation continued to be the law of the land. So we went back to the White House last year, and it was the trip of a lifetime. It ranks right up there with some of the more prominent things I've done in my life, and I would say it was another visceral, sort of full circle, out-of-body experience for me, because there were families from each of the 5 cases during the 1950s that were there. Some of the family members had transitioned, and so some of the folks that were part of the contingency of Brown showed up with pictures, if you will, in hand. So that they were, when we were in the Eisenhower room, as an example, and being sort of courted around and greeted and met with, they would say, this is my mother, or this is my grandmother. She's not here with us, but she's here in spirit, and I had to bring her picture along so that they could take part in the 70th anniversary, commemorative 70th anniversary. It was pretty profound.
I can only imagine. So I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about how this historical, part of being an American really is part of your family's story. And I just want to hear you talk about how that has shaped you and what your plans are for your education and for the future, and how those two, sort of correlate with one another.
Definitely is part of the fabric of who I am. It lay dormant for a long time as I was, navigating life, my own personal journey. After I moved to the West Coast after high school, I spent, a decade working in retail and then moved into sales and technology. And, I attended school intermittently with a number of stops along the way, finally landing at Sac State. And that was, felt drawn to the campus, obviously, and eventually led to me enrolling and got through the program there, BSCTS program, graduated summa cum laude. I just had a different focus, right? And sort of reverse engineered my academic journey. But, it shaped me in a very profound way. It let me know that it was never too late. I'm of the mindset anyway that I don't let anything hold me back, and that I can do anything that I put my mind to, obviously. And so for the simple fact that I graduated university at 60, It didn't, I didn't have any reservations around sort of my intellectual maturity and my mindset, just kind of navigating that process. But it certainly helped shape my scholarly opinions, and I've just recognized my professional journey along the way in terms of the successes that I'd had, overcoming any areas of struggle with academics prior, and receiving the necessary support, from Sac State that I did. And so I found the achievement solely through my own efforts, but also, connected with, college counselors and advisors, and the professors and my peers, played a very crucial role in shaping my academic achievements and goals at Sac State. And before that, I actually got my associates at American River College. So when I boomeranged and moved back to Sacramento, I drove down Del Paso Road and I saw that American River had built a brand new campus, which is just blocks away from where I built my house. And so those connective tissues, that, me connecting the dots and seeing that, drove me to complete my associates, which was then a pathway for me to partake in the career and technical education program at Sac State. And it just all made sense. So, everyone's guidance along the way provided the right support for me and helped me navigate, and continue to set those higher education ambitious goals for myself.
Yeah, we all have our path, our own motivations for being here. And the neighborhood that you're talking about where you built your house, I had a home in the same neighborhood, my first house. And
Wow.
It's interesting just to hear that you and I may have crossed paths, in the neighborhood, and over the last several decades, even because you were, making deliveries in the same area that I was finishing high school. We've both been on the Sac State campus with thousands of other people, and you just don't know where they're coming from, what their stories are, the reason that they're here, and what their hopes and dreams are. And it just sort of, I don't know, it inspires me to want to be curious about the people that I'm constantly surrounded by. But, let's go back to your story, because you were balancing work, school, and from what I understand, caregiving. I mean, this sounds like a heavy load. So what kept you going through some of the hardest parts of your journey?
The guidance with the community and the support, and you're absolutely right. Our paths probably did cross more than once. The longer that I'm afforded the luxury of, waking up to see the sunshine every day, my universe definitely shrinks, and it grows as well. And so, the help that I've received in terms of navigating my academic journey and setting more ambitious goals for myself, it stemmed from my my familial upbringing, from my parents, from the giant shoulders that I stand on. The civil rights movement was a struggle for blacks in the mid 50s to late 60s to achieve equal rights, and not just blacks, but multicultural communities as well, intergenerational. There's a lot of trauma that's associated with that. And so those events kind of sparked, the emergence of, in me, I've been called a social justice warrior and a human rights activist as well. But that civil rights movement was, the catalyst, if you will, not only for racial segregation, the lawsuit Brown v. Board, the whole notion of separate but equal education. And those services I knew were available to me. I just needed to find out the different access points along the way and not let that hold me back. So while I was held back in some ways, I was fueled by the notion that I could, create my own journey and my own path. And I knew education just based on the fact that my dad, graduated from Kansas University, went on to teach at Cal State in Fullerton as a professor in fine arts and traveled the world. My mother, started her own business as a beautician in these very tumultuous times. And so we were raised to believe that we could be anything, do anything if we put our hearts and minds to it. and obviously with the guidance of God in the picture. I come from a very religious-based background, very spiritual oriented, and that the principles and teachings definitely have helped us set our path. And just through partnership and being a good people person, I should say, I love people. And for the simple fact that I'm able to go out and speak to the White House or to my local recycling professionals that keep our neighborhood safe and clean, I am not opposed to letting humanity lead my efforts, and I think that's where my successes have come. My dad was on the Liberation Front in New York City and in Chicago, and my mom stayed and raised the family in the Midwest. And so I got both ends of the spectrum, right? So it afforded me, again, the luxury of not abandoning my goals and my aspirations, but completing them, and instead becoming not only a student of life, but traveling a little bit, playing the saxophone, singing in gospel choirs, enjoying the West Coast life on the beach and in the sun. And also my mom, she put a number of apparatuses in my hand. I love sports. I've all participated in basketball. I was a quarterback in football. I ran track. I played tennis and racquetball. I wrestled. So there wasn't many sports that I did not take advantage of or a liking to. But I knew that my ticket in this world would be my academics and the intelligence that I was born with, and I dedicated myself to that. And soon I found myself getting accepted in these circles and moving through life in a way that made sense for me, not what would be considered traditional.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud to call you a fellow Hornet. And I just want to congratulate you. I understand that you're moving on to law school. And so let me know what is the message that you hope to leave with your fellow graduates when you speak at commencement?
I intend to share a little bit about my academic journey. Obviously mentioned Brown because I graduated from the College of Education, and I've achieved these scholarly recognitions and overcome these challenges as a result of the guidance and the mentorship and the advisors and professors, all the profs and peers at Sac State. And so I'm eager to continue this journey of empowerment, and that's going to be kind of my message to the graduating class of 2025, and that they're going to do even greater things and be even more impactful than myself, but just remember not to forget where they came from, and whatever field they choose to pursue, that completing your education, as someone coming right out of high school as an adult, it should be deeply rooted in a life of commitment of something, right? Whether it's career and technical studies, or if they decide to go into law, or they decide to become an engineer, or start their own business. There's a multitude of things that are available to them, but just continue to nurture that and listen to their heart and their mind, and they will be carried forward in life accordingly.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Congratulations again, and thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Have a good rest of your day.
And today, I stand in awe of this moment. This is an academic community that I'm drawn to and I'm tied to through the duration, and this is my calling. In the 1990s, as Dr. Wood said, I drove a freight truck and delivered express mail to the Sacramento State campus. I would walk through the campus and I would pause and I would whisper to myself, one day I'll earn my degree from this esteemed university. Today, that promise has been fulfilled. I would be remiss if I didn't salute every professor on stage with me, in the audience, or watching via live stream, the program administrators who poured into me at Sacramento State. Your wisdom helped me turn my vision into a reality. My path, as Dr. Wood said, is rooted in legacy. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my mother and my father, but my mother and my grandmother, my auntie, were two of the original 13 plaintiffs in Brown versus Board of Education, the case that struck down separate but equal. Their courage echoes through me today. Today, I wear a bow tie from the diaspora. First at my associate graduation, again at the Oval Office last year, commemorating the 70th anniversary with then President Biden. I also had a conversation with President Wood about my North Star dream to become a civil rights attorney. I now pursue that dream at McGeorge School of Law here in Sacramento. This bow tie, while I like to call it a fashion statement, it's a thread of purpose and representation, a tribute to the giants on whose shoulders I stand. Thurgood Marshall once said, "None of us got here by ourselves. We got here by being pulled up by someone else." And I paraphrase, so don't forget where you come from and reach back and help someone else pick up their boots. Now it's your turn. Let your work as graduates shift the molecular energy of this world. Ignite your mind, elevate your hearts at the same time, and birth new justice while you're at it. So this is where the great-great-grandpa PK kid in me says, turn to your neighbor really quick and say, the real work begins now, and so do you. All right, let that reverberate. But congratulations, class of 2025. I stand in awe, and I wish you nothing but the best. Now go out and shake the foundation of the world. Stingers up.
Beyond J is a production of University Communications at Sacramento State. Our producer is Jonathan Morales. Additional research by Daniel Wilson. And editing by me, your host, Philip Allstott. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review and consider following us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have questions or comments, email us at communications@csus.edu and visit us online at csus.edu/beyondj. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.